So I've seen some very interesting things on my time of looking at Twitter or X video thing, whatever the hell you want to call it now. Like I think a lot of people have. We've all seen some very interesting things on that app. Again, whether it's by politicians, Donald Trump saying Joe Biden looks like a bloke who should be in a retirement village, or...
Hey everyone, I'm Joe Biden's husband.
Or Elon Musk just basically making fun of Kamala Harris on there. There's definitely some very interesting things to look at if you just open Twitter that will make you start to either think or probably, re-question your life, or, literally both. But for example, there was something really interesting that caught my eye today, and it has to do with the Sydney Swans, who have been in more controversy over the media, literally more than like what KSI and Logan Paul are, or what, Sydney Stack and Callum Coleman-Jones were in, of course, 2020, if you know. But obviously they had their coach, John Longmire, not retire, but stand down from the club, and a couple other different things here and there. But one of them that has really caught my eye was on Twitter, and is by a guy by the name of Ryan Daniels, who I believe works at 7 News Perth, and he actually says, yes, Chad Warner played golf with West Coast Eagles CEO Dom Pike and West Coast Head of Strategy and Innovation Kieran Jack on Sunday. A few ex-workmates catching up, or a chat about the future. Chad's prize signature, a big watch for 2025. Now look, this is really concerning if you're a Sydney Swans fan, because, as Damien Barrett, I think, said it best, and even though a lot of people don't agree with what he says and would honestly quite frequently just call him a four-eyed man who likes to chat shit, but Damien Barrett said something really interesting that caught my attention previously, that was kind of like, you don't really lose 2 grand finals by the amount that they did within 2 years and not have like some sort of ripple effect and some sort of drama attached to their club. Again, a lot of media experts and analysts out there have predicted not a downfall of the Sydney Swans, but definitely a step back from the great achievements they had last year due to, again, another thumping grand final loss. And look, this has started with Longmire, of course, leaving. I think Dom Pike, of course, left to West Coast as well. This is potentially could be turning into a ripple effect. Not that I think it will, and I think a lot of people are being really over dramatic, but there is still a chance now we are looking at a situation where a guy like Chad Warner maybe isn't at the club beyond 2025. Now, there's a lot of really interesting ways you can look at this. First of all, I think it does suck for Sydney, although I have heard arguments of people saying, well, it's not the worst thing for Sydney because they can get a bunch of first round picks in and maybe turn that into really helping out their backline, which is, I think, something the Swans really do need, especially what we saw out of finals. It does look like they could add a player or two to that backline, while again, their midfield is pretty stacked. And then there's just the other side of the coin where Sydney are arguably losing their best player, not only their best player, but their best young player, and a guy who could literally be a Brownlow contender pretty soon. He has polled really high, and I think the last 2. And the fact is, one really, really good season. I wouldn't be surprised if this dude was polling in like 30 votes for the Sydney Swans. And I would say contending for a Brownlow, but now to think about it, with the inflation of the Brownlows, you probably need like 55 votes or something to win the next one. Shout out Patrick Cripps for getting 45 somehow. But the more I've thought about this, not only do I not think he will go, I still think he probably will sign a massive like $10 million deal with the Sydney Swans. It is a question now where I'm like, how do I justify my opinion on that when you've got this bloke meeting with the CEO of West Coast and another West Coast staff member, even though they're former Sydney staff members as well and a Sydney player? It is a little bit suspicious to say the least, that they are doing this thing over golf. Like, I remember, I feel like as well, a lot of big conversations happen over golf. I've had a couple of my boys over the time. Remember one time I was talking to one of my good mates about how I think the Richmond future was going to go. The other time I was finishing up with golf and we were talking about what we're going to get from KFC. So again, a lot of really important things are said over a game of golf. And I do wonder if one of them was, would you potentially be interested in signing with the West Coast Eagles, you know, at the end of 2025, and of course getting a trade done to maybe make that happen. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, yeah, this really benefits West Coast. And I think West Coast are sneakingly building, I should say, a very, very good and underrated young team that is not being talked about / is being overshadowed by the massive trade they did in this most recent offseason, where they, of course, basically traded away pick 3 for like pick 12, Liam Baker and Matt Owies. Again, they actually did really well out of that trade, bringing in Liam Baker and Matt Owies, who will completely help the depth of this team, as well as Beau Allen was the guy they got, a Western Australian product who some people believed could have gone as high as like pick 7 or 8 in one of the more deeper drafts. And if it was next year's draft, would have 100% been a top 10 pick. I think it's a really good move by West Coast. And look, they're bringing in some young players. We don't really have to mention Harley Reid. I think everyone knows about that. But there's something good going on over there right now. And I mean, look, if they could add Chad Warner to that midfield that already looks like Harley Reid, Tim Kelly, Ruben Ginby, of course, Beau Allen now, potentially Chad Warner, a Liam Baker in there, Jack Graham. That midfield is starting to look really, really good. And I think a powerhouse duo of Harley Reid and Chad Warner would be, I mean, it would be absolutely insane to realistically think. So, yeah, do I think Chad Warner is going to leave? Maybe not yet. I still need a little bit more evidence because I think a lot of players really love it in Sydney. But in the same time, people are predicting that ripple effect will come out of the Swans since their massive grand final losses. It's already semi-started, and now you've got a situation where a player is meeting with another team's CEO over a game of golf, who is the CEO of the team where he's from. And this team is also looking like it's building a massive draft capital to go after a guy like Chad Warner next year again. It does start to look really interesting, and yeah, I think it could very well happen. Now, what would it be? West Coast would obviously have to trade away their pick next year, which would be a top 5, because I think he's restricted, so Sydney would therefore go on to match it, I should say. They would not only have to trade pick 5, but they would probably have to trade their other first round pick I think they got in as well, because again, yeah, this guy could literally be a top 10 player very, very soon if he's not already a top 10 player in the game, and in a couple of years could be like a top 5 player. So you're definitely going to have to pay up a fair bit, and I think he also works really well into that West Coast midfield, would work really well into Andrew McQualter's system. And I mean, having Chad Warner and, of course, Harley Reid in the same midfield is like sex on a stick, or whatever that means. I don't know. But yeah, there's something really interesting going on right here. And I think, realistically, there is still a massive chance this happens. And it could be something that goes down to the wire. So I'm interested to see how this, of course, goes. I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Do you guys think Chad Warner is going to go to the West Coast Eagles, or do you think he might re-sign at Sydney? Again, I'd very much like to know. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channels and my IRL/vlogging channels, as well as this channel, sports channel, with all the latest sports news. Again, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.